Am I on now? I'm on now. I'm way on now, right? So it is a privilege to come and to study with you guys. And so I want you to know that. I enjoy teaching and I enjoy being part of this group of people so that we learn together. And so tonight we will continue in our prophet series, if you will. And we have made pretty good progress. Let's see how much you retained. This is as Michael says, is the audience participation portion. Okay, he stole that from me, by the way, a long time ago. What's the difference in major prophets and minor prophets? Major prophets are 6 foot above, right? Minor prophets are below 6 foot tall. It's the length of the book. It is about the length and the capacity of the writings, and there are 4 major prophets. Okay, who can name all 4 major prophets? No, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. What were you thinking? Okay. Also, we are looking at a divided kingdom. What are the kingdoms divided into? North and south. What makes up the southern tribes? What 2 tribes? Judah and Benjamin. Look at there, Jack. Thank you so much. Who is the esteemed member that comes out of Judah? Jesus. Who is the esteemed member that comes out of Benjamin? Paul. Now, this is a trick question. If you got 2 tribes that make up the southern kingdom, how many northern tribes are there? 10. Okay? Now, part of the reason that they are divided, well, really the reason they're divided is after Solomon, his son Rehoboam took over. And he was even more harsh than his father Solomon. And under that oppressive reign, Jeroboam, who was just a servant, broke away with the other 10 tribes. So only 2 stayed faithful to the Judea area, worshiping in the temple in Jerusalem, following the law, the Torah. The other 10 tribes set up their worship center not in Jerusalem, but where? Samaria. And this is why when you read over in the New Testament, you see all this harsh feelings towards Samaria. Over time, the Samaritans intermingled within the cultures around them, and they became basically known as what kind of Jews? Half Jews, because they had been pulled into the culture around them. So when you read the New Testament, you go back and you go, hey, on Wednesday night I learned something. All this goes back to a divided kingdom, and because of that divided kingdom, the Samaritans are really not liked. So we have a divided kingdom, and we have major and minor prophets, and there's only going to be major prophets that come out of Judah. So the southern tribes all these major prophets are going to come out of just the southern tribes. There's going to be prophets that are going to be sent to Israel, which is the 10 tribes. Judah is known as the southern tribes. So southern tribes are known as Judah. The northern tribes, the other 10, are known as Israel. So when you read this division, you go, why does he say, and Judah and Israel? It's because we're looking at a divided kingdom. So that makes sense to everybody? Okay. A lot of this, what we're going to read, is about ultimately pulling these tribes back together to make a combined, unified nation of Israel. Okay? So as we look at these writings, they are directed very clearly for a purpose. And it's going to lead way down the road implications. The first one we talked about was Isaiah. Isaiah was that prophet that when you read that book, God says, okay, The children that I have raised have rebelled. The children that I have raised have forsaken me. The children that I have raised have forsaken me, and they have despised me. Now that's pretty harsh words for that group of people that God chose out of all the nations on earth, Freddie, to be his special people. And Isaiah says, you have forsaken me. Those are hard words, aren't they? But he also doubles down on the fact that the Lord is not only holy, but the Lord is faithful. That's just kind of a little snapshot of Isaiah. Even though you're wretched, even though you have done terrible things, God is going to be holy in his nature, and he's going to be faithful in his attitude towards you. Why? Why is God going to be faithful to these wretched children? Because he made a covenant. Now this is important. Now I hope you have learned as we've gone through the Bible, there's a couple of dynamics. First of all, Israel is never going to be faithful. Okay? Never. Never, ever, ever, ever. Till the end. And not only are they not going to be faithful, but God is always going to be faithful. So we're living in two extremes. Y'all kind of see that? Two extremes. Isaiah is that guy that says the Lord is holy, he's faithful. Then you get Jeremiah. I love Jeremiah. Because by the time we get to this prophet, Jeremiah is writing saying, listen, you are so full of yourself. You want your way so badly. You are so narcissistic. How many of you know somebody that's a narcissist? That you just want to be you. The problem is that you're nothing but clay in the potter's hands. I love that story. I was told to go down to the potter's house. What did I see? I saw the potter there trying to mold this clay. And the clay just would not be molded. It was not malleable. And so I had to set it aside and make something out of it other than what I intended. Now, he didn't get rid of it. It was still there. How many of y'all, when y'all were in school, had taken art class? You know, now this is where we've come from. This is where we've come from. In art class, when we got to the pottery portion, we got to make ashtrays for our families. How many of y'all made an ashtray for you? I mean, it was great, wasn't it? I mean, you could smoke in school then. You just had to do it over a barrel. And if there was enough soft drinks in there, you had to fight the bees to get to the barrel. Jeremiah says, listen, guys, it's the potter that determines what is made on the wheel, not you. You don't get to pick and choose. You don't get to be the best version of you. You get to be what he wants you to be. And until you learn to be malleable, until you learn to let the potter have his way with you, you're always going to fight against the potter. Now, can I ask you something tonight? When you fight against God, who wins? God. How many of you, like me, have made life hard on yourself sometimes because you just wanted to fight against someone you couldn't win against? I've done that. How about you? Jeremiah says there's also a new covenant coming. So regardless of how bad the moment is, there's something better coming. Jesus addressed this whole thing. He said, listen, there's a new covenant that's going to be made with Judah and Israel. And it's not like an old wineskin that you can put new wine in, because if you do that, what happens? It breaks. It's not like an old garment, the old covenant, that you can just put a piece of a new patch of a new covenant on it, because when you try to do that, the tear that you had only gets worse. There's a new covenant coming. Every one of these prophets, there's a day coming when all of this will be better. The problem is, what are you going to do in between now and then? We talked about Ezekiel. And by the time you get to Ezekiel, things have gotten dire. Now you get all this bizarre language in Ezekiel. Ezekiel's a beautiful book, but you got to put it in its right place. What is the problem? Israel basically is spiritually dead. And the world is going to pick it apart like a bunch of buzzards. And so the question is asked in that great passage in Ezekiel, looking over all the dead bones, the dried up bones, the white bones. It ain't just dead, it's dead, dead, dead. And the question is asked, can these bones live again? And the answer is, they can. This has nothing to do with the Gentiles. Who does this have everything to do with? The kingdom, Israel, the divided kingdoms of northern kingdom, southern kingdom. They're divided, and there's going to have to be a time when they come back together. And this is all of this. This is every bit of this. So does that make sense to y'all? When you read these major prophets, all of this is about a restoration coming. Now, the question always comes to my mind, and it has many times, is if all the nation of Israel had these books, why didn't they see what was coming with Messiah? We get to that fourth book, Daniel. We just started that. Do the nation of Israel, do the Jews to this day see Daniel as a book of prophecy? No. They see it as just one of the writings. It has no more weight than Job to them, which is also one of the writings. So when we look at this, we see great prophecy in Daniel. When they look at it, they just see a story. Changes the way you see things. It helps to understand how the nation of Israel sees these things, right? And so we get to that last great prophet, major prophet of Daniel. And all of this is going to be about kingdoms, if you will, and about kingdoms that will stand and things that will not stand. If you go back just a little bit of a review, chapter 1, I'm not going to read this whole book. Please read it. It's a beautiful book, but it would take forever to read the whole book. Daniel and his friends, what was his friends' names? Shadrach, Meshach, and Amigo, right? Abednego. They were brought into captivity, okay? And they were brought there because they were the best of the best. Surely, had we been in captivity, all of us would have been chosen, right, Robert? We were the cream of the crop, right? Hey, listen, my first round at baseball, I got chose to be the bat boy. I mean, I was that bad. So, but these kids were smart. So they were brought in, and they were going to be raised to be big workers in the kingdom. The first dilemma they had was that they didn't want to eat the king's food. Why didn't they want to eat the king's food? Because it broke the laws that God had given the Jews. Right? Do you remember God gave them dietary restrictions? They could only eat things that were, what do we call it? Kosher. Right? My dad used to haul swinging beef in a trailer. And a priest would have to bless it when it went in. And a priest would have to bless it before you could take it out. It had to be blessed. It had to be kosher. We use that word when we say everything's going to be okay. We call it's kosher. Okay? Our terminology comes from these same things. And when they didn't eat the king's food, how did they progress compared to all the others? They were better. Now, if you're looking for a real diet strategy, and I take some exceptions with this, okay? I do love a good fried catfish. How about you? I'm not even going to go to some good pulled pork. I mean, that would just freak my Jewish friends out. But there was a reason why God gave them these dietary laws. Everything God gave to the nation of Israel made them distinctly different. Were they supposed to be like the world around them in their habits, in their marriages, in their attitudes, in their worship? No. But what did they want to do? They wanted to be like everybody else. Isn't that a huge, compelling thing today, even for us? I mean, we say we want to be an individual, we want to be different, but then we strive so hard to be like everybody else. And we go, I ain't going to be like everybody else. And then we go buy the same clothes everybody else is wearing because it's trendy. Or we'll go buy the same kind of vehicles because everybody else has got one. It's human nature. And you know what? Satan uses our human nature against us. Because we struggle with our human nature, don't we? Have y'all ever been caught up in some kind of little competition and just refused to lose? I have a confession. I collect old Western toys. And most of them you have to buy off of eBay. I was bidding on one. And before I knew it, I was bidding against one. It had to be one fella. If I could have got to him, I'd have choked the life out of him. Can I tell you? I ain't going to tell you what I actually spent. It was twice what I had said I'm going to spend. Why? Because I got caught up in it. Caught up in it. Now, don't tell my wife that. She don't need to know. Because guess what? She ain't getting no new shoes for a while. No shoes for a while. Imelda. But we get caught up in it. You see, the human condition is just that. So to understand the nation of Israel, without some judgment, you just have to go, you know what? I get it. Everything around them looks so much better than what they had. Have you ever watched anything about the Amish people? How many of y'all could live growing up as an Amish person and stay in the Amish community? With your wagons, working in the farm, working in the fields, making hats, really unattractive hats, actually. Really unattractive dresses. Would that be hard for most of us? Well, see, that's kind of the way I process this. The nation of Israel really got pulled into the world around them, and that was not God's design for them. He gave them dietary laws so they could be distinctly different. Chapter 2, Daniel is going to interpret the king Nebuchadnezzar's dream of this statue composed of 4 metals. Y'all remember that? I'm just reviewing. It's going to be the earthly kingdoms that will eventually be destroyed. Every kingdom on earth will have a beginning and it will have a what? An ending. Now, we just celebrated 250 years. Is that very old? I mean, Freddie and Byron graduated the same year this became a country, 1776. Right? You heard what I said. But is that very old? We're young. The Civil War started what year? 1861. Guess what year I was born? 1961. 100 years after the beginning of the Civil War, I was born. Is that a long time? Not really. Every kingdom on this earth will have a beginning, and it will have an ending. And there's only one eternal kingdom, and that has nothing to do with these people that Daniel's talking about. The only kingdom that will last forever is the kingdom that God establishes. Amen? And that's what Daniel's telling them. Nebuchadnezzar, your dream is nothing more than a pictorial view of the future. It's going to come to an end. If something doesn't change in the next 50 years, a lot's going to come to an end. Technology has sped up everything. When some of you were a kid, the only technology you had was one bulb in the center of the room and you pulled a chain. That was high technology. Do you think that people then could fathom that you could have robotics? That you could have AI? And that AI would eventually take over everything you do? If I'm not careful, I'll be talking, my phone will just start talking to me. I was in a meeting the other day, because I don't call it Siri, I call it Sherry. My phone will answer Sherry. Matter of fact, my phone's the only woman I got in my life that will answer me when I talk to her. Every time. So I was in a meeting with our HR person, who's Sherry Cook in Batesville, and I said, "Now, Sherry," and my phone said, "Yes." And she went, "I thought this was a private meeting." It is. It's just my phone trying to figure out what we're talking about. Kingdoms are going to come and go. But man's arrogance is this: we think we're forever. And we're not. Daniel chapter 3. The three amigos refused to bow down to the golden idol that has been made. Last week we saw that because they refused to be integrated into worship, they held a line and were distinctly different in their food. Now they're going, we're not going to violate the order of worship. And because of their stand on not worshiping a false god, what happened to them? They were thrown into the furnace. And at the end of the day, they knew that their God was able. And this is the big theme in this one. This is the thing I love about that part of the story, is that they looked at the king and said, "Now here's the deal, dude. Our God is able. Did you hear me? Able. Able times 1,000. Able times 1,000,000. He is able to protect us from the fire, but he's also able to protect us from you." The time to know that God is able, Stanley, is not when trouble comes. You need to know God is able before the trouble starts. Man walked into a bar. It wasn't Macadoodle, but it was somebody like him. He said, "Give me a drink quick before the trouble starts." Bartender poured him a shot of whiskey. He jumped in there. He said, "Give me a shot of whiskey before the trouble starts." Bartender now is concerned. He poured him another. "What is this trouble?" He said, "Well, hold on. One more time. I need a shot of whiskey before the trouble starts." And he gulped it down. The bartender's frantic. He said, "What's the trouble?" He said, "The trouble starts when you find out I ain't got no money." You can use that, Michael. It's free for you, but it's free for you. The time to figure out God is able is not when the trouble starts. The time to figure out that God is able is before the trouble starts. It's before somebody tells you you have cancer. That ain't the time to start trying to develop your faith. That's the time you sit back and rest in your faith. I don't care much about swimming in a pool, but I don't mind floating around on a float. You see, that's the way we ought to be when it comes to our crises, is we ought to lay back and be able to rest in the arms of a loving, holy God. That's what? Able. Able. Able for whatever our problem is. I love the story of God is able. Chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream about a massive tree being cut down. And he fails to humble his pride, and he's struck with madness for 7 years until he repents and acknowledges God's rule. That little story reminds us not only that God is able, but that man is arrogant. and that God is great. Have you ever known somebody that was arrogant? It's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. That ought to be my theme song, right? The problem with these rulers is that they have power for a minute. And that power, what does absolute power do? It absolutely corrupts. And so by the time we get to chapter 4, we have become completely arrogant now. And God's going to humble this prideful man and strike him with madness until he repents. And it's pretty humbling. If you look at chapter 4, you're going to find out this rascal right here, he's having to do some things he never dreamed he would do. Can I tell you something? God has a way of making the arrogant man, the prideful man, come to a place of humility quick. Amen? Chapter 5 is where we'll start tonight. How many of you ever heard the expression, the handwriting is on the wall? So much of what we have. Now, the handwriting on the wall to us means you ought to see what's coming because it's coming. Okay? So let's look at chapter 5. King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. Belshazzar, when he had tasted the wine, commanded the vessels of gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem. He brought the king and his lords, his wives and concubines, that they might drink from them. So what is he doing? He's desecrating the things that are set aside for God. And they brought the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords and his wives and his concubines drank from them. Can you imagine anything much more egregious than that? Just absolutely thumbing your nose. They drank, verse 4, from the wine, praised the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone to make it worse. And immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand. And the king saw the hand as it wrote. Now look at this next verse. And the king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. I believe that's an understatement. Have you ever seen anybody scared stiff? Have you ever been scared stiff? This is how arrogant this kingdom is. That they have now desecrated the things set aside for God. And God is so upset about it that he leaves a little note. You remember the story of Jesus when everybody was accusing this little woman? He bent down, took a stick, and he started writing in the dirt. Now, I don't know what he wrote. It could be a number of anything. But I believe when they left, Michael, didn't you say something about this not long ago? I woke up during that. I remember that. They left oldest to the youngest. I believe if I had been writing on the ground, I'd have went, listen, I'm finna take this stick and start wearing you out from the oldest to the youngest. Because you have made me thoroughly mad. I believe that God is thoroughly mad. And does he have a reason to be? Now we're desecrating the things set aside for him. The king's color changed. His thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way and his knees knocked together. How many of y'all remember the Andy Griffith when Barney... Every time I read this, I think of that. Had to go into the haunted house. I mean, yeah, this is that guy. Turned out to just be Rafe Hollister making moonshine in the house. Some of y'all just kinfolks. The king saw the hand, his color changed, his limbs, all this stuff. He just scared to death. And the king called loudly to bring the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, listen, you can call anybody you want, but they're not going to be able to help you. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? This world, like these stories, we think we are so smart. We think that we can create our own world, that we don't need the potter. We don't need his influence in our life. And the whole time, this handwriting is pointing to what's going to become immediate judgment. Let's read the rest of the story. Judgment's coming. Why is judgment coming? Because you have thumbed your nose at a holy God. Do we do that as a nation today? Yes, we do. I mean, look at the things around us in this world. And you can see every bit of this played out right here in this little story that this prophet is writing. Look at chapter 6. This is a story that most people know. Michael's going to like this because what do you call it? Alliteration? What is that, Michael? Alliteration? When you use D. He used to get on to me. I'd have like 2 words that would be a D, disciple, devote, whatever. And then I'd put in there some other word. He'd go, you couldn't find a D? They go, so you're going to like this. Okay? You're going to like this. I'm going to alliterate. How many of you have heard the story of Daniel in the lion's den? This story's progressive. Daniel's now old. He has weathered a multitude of storms. Can I tell you something? I believe Daniel's ready to leave this world. How many of you have seen people that this world has just become too much? I can remember sitting beside many of older people fixing to leave this world, and they would go, I want to go home. And it didn't take long to figure out that they weren't talking about 1209 County Road 3319. They were talking about, I want to go where God always intended me to be, and that's home with him. Daniel is an old man now. Look at verse 1. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be brought throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, of whom these satraps should give account, so that the king might suffer no loss. Then this Daniel became, here's my first D, distinguished above all the other officials and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him. Daniel was just outstanding. He was that guy. He had just weathered all of this. Not only the interpreter of dreams, but he could tell you the dream. He was that guy. The king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Then the high officials and the satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom. But they found no ground or complaint or any fault, because he was faithful and no error was found in him. Then these men said, we shall not find any ground for complaint against Daniel unless we find it in connection with the laws of his God. The second D is he was despised. He was despised by the people around him because he was so much better. And these guys want to bring him down. The high officials, verse 6, and the satraps came to agreement to the king and said, O King Darius, live forever. Now, they know that the only way to get to Daniel is to connect him to his worship of the only one true God. That's what they're going to do. They said, O King Darius, live forever. All the high officials in the kingdom, the prefects, the satraps, the counselors, the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction And whoever makes petitions to any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Do they know that Daniel's going to violate this? Yeah, absolutely. So the king established an injunction. He signed the document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the document, the injunction. They had Daniel now, because they know that Daniel is distinguished in the kingdom. He's despised by the people around him. The third D, but he is disciplined in the things of God. He is not going to change what he does just to satisfy these people. Discipline is what the word discipleship is, the same thing. To build families of faith means that we have to build disciples. And that means we have to be disciplined in the things of God. Not just an event that we go to. And you've heard Michael say it so many times. You've heard me say it long before Michael. Church is not an event that you go to. We don't go to church. We are the church. He was disciplined. Verse 10, and when Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in the upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day. He prayed and he gave thanks before his God. And as he had done previously, this was not something he did. This is something he'd always done. He'd always done this. Verse 11, then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petitions and plea before God. And they came near and said to the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petitions to any god or man within 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the lion's den? And the king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said to him, now they got him. They got him. Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. The problem is the king's got a problem. Why? Because it can't be revoked. Okay? All he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said, O king, know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and the Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king established can be changed. It's bad to be a king with all this power and you're trapped by your own signature because he was dumb. The third word is dumped. Did you like that, Michael? The third one is dumped. The king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared, O Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. The king's praying. I hope Daniel survives. Verse 17, a stone was brought and laid the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and signed it for his lords, and nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled him. The man is concerned, but he's powerless. Powerless. The last word, Michael, make sure you get this, is delivered. Then at daybreak the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. And as he came near the den where the Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. And the king declared to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Now let's think about this. The furnace didn't do much except get a bunch of other people killed. Let's see if the lions fare any better. Verse 21, then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. I got a good night's sleep. I had a fur-lined bed. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they could not harm me, because I was found blameless before him and also before you, O king. I know that my God is able to not only protect me from the furnace, but from you. I know that my God was able to deliver me from the lions, and he's done just that. And even your decrees, O king. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded Daniel to be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted his God. And the king commanded those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den. They didn't learn nothing from the furnace. They were cast into the lions, not only them, but their what? Their children, their wives. And before they reached to the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the people, nations, languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the what kind of God? And how long does he endure? Forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall never end. He should have just ended with that in his own line of thought. Because what did Daniel already told him? All these kingdoms are going to come and go. Even yours. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. I love that story, because God is going to endure forever. And Daniel, as we move into next week, we're going to find him put us in a little bit of a frame about the future. And so the story of Daniel is very important. I wonder why the Jews in Israel didn't get this to this day. It's a huge message to them, amen? Prayer requests. Remember the Beckett family? Kathy Beckett's funeral is tomorrow. She died suddenly, and most of you, I think, probably know Jerry Beckett, the insurance company that Missy worked for. So remember that family. Any others? Yes, sir?